Hello, and thank you very much for inviting me tonight. My name is Jacob, and my introduction got lost in the ether, which is fine. That's how I feel today anyway. Just briefly then, because it's not about me. So I've been working doing anti-racist and anti-Zionist work in Berlin now since the 80s. So that's been a while. It's really not about me. And I'm also a member of Jüdische Stimme.
Can we have silence, please? Yes.
Eurovisions have brought us here today. Does this remind you of anything on this day of Eurovision? This is when you get to say something. Very good. Do you know what this is, though? This is when you get to say something again. No. This was the flag from 1879 to 1960 of the colonial space entitled Congo, more or less under the personal ownership of King Leopold of Belgium, from 1879 to 1885. Let's bring it home. 1885, the Berlin Conference, when the African continent was divided up amongst European powers at the bequest of Leopold, with the United States in 1884 being the first nation to recognize, I quote, the humane and benevolent work of Leopold in what he called at that point the International Association of Congo, which in 1885 was called the Free State Congo until 1908. And in 1908, it was handed over to the Belgian government, a colony then called the Belgian Congo. This was the flag. Eurovisions have brought us here today. Phil invited me to share a piece with you tonight, which I presented in November. It feels like a lifetime ago. It is lifetimes ago. I chose not to update, better to hear the lifetimes. Children, generations, and rivers. It is difficult to know in these times, to know where to begin, where to turn. For this moment, I want to turn to children, to generations, and to rivers. I begin. Dai adam dai, adam dai dai, dai adam dai, adam dai, adam dai, adam dai, adam dai. Where life is precious, life is precious. The words of Ruth Wilson Gilmore, African-American abolitionist, scholar, and activist. Eyes are for looking and seeing sun. Tongues are for greeting and saying fun. Legs are for walking slowly and also run. Hands are for shaking with friends, not for shooting gun. Written by Fatima Saidam, age 9, killed in the rubble of Gaza. And the child asked, "Where do the sounds go when we don't hear them anymore?" 10,000 and more lives slaughtered. 4,000, 5,000 and more of these lives, the lives of children. The voice of Sarah al-Sadi, 14 years old, in Gaza a few days ago. This is not a war. This is the extermination of children. Is she still alive today? The voice of Khalida Zakaria, 45 years old, in Gaza a few days ago. This is a war against children. I cried so hard when I saw children writing their names on their hands and feet. Some of them asked me, "Does this mean we're going to die?" I told them, "No, this is just a game." In wars of extermination, children are primary game. To kill the children is to kill the future. This is horribly an ancient genocidal strategy across times and spaces. It continues to our day, across generations. I always dream of a life clear as the serenity of the sky, and a heart beating with love and optimism. Why our smiles do not bloom like the flowers? Let us fly freely as those butterflies, satisfied, colorful, and flapping sky high, away from worries, anxieties, and sorrows. Written by Obeda Mohammed Abu Oda, aged 14, killed in the rubble of Gaza. And the child asked, "Where do the sounds go when we don't hear them anymore?" There are different ways to kill the children. Kill their bodies, kill their breath, their voices. Kill their lifeline to the breath, the voices of those who brought them to life, made their life possible today and all the yesterdays. Maim, mutilate their souls in ongoing trauma, in ongoing catastrophe of being, in ongoing exile from freedom and peace. Generations. I saw many videos of children who were torn to pieces. Nobody knew who they were. I saw pictures of children writing their names on their hands. That's why I sat in the schoolyard and wrote my name on my hands and my feet. Other children came around and I wrote their names for them. I felt sad, but this is life in Gaza. The words a few days ago of Reem Salama, 10 years old. Is she still alive today? Language has deserted me. Adanya Shibli, last week. As we know, there are many words we are not allowed to speak today. But as we also know, this is not about what is not allowed. It is about what is allowed, or more specifically, about what is authorized. how institutionalized denial and criminalization are one, creating meanings and authorizing systems of being and beings themselves. This authoring has a very long and very deep history, with deeply embodied consequences across times and spaces for generations upon generations. In fact, one could say it is all about generations. I turn to generations and listen. In the mid-16th century, there was a public debate in Spain between conquistadores and missionaries. The question they debated was, do natives have a soul, or are they natural-born slaves? If they have a soul, then we have the Christian duty to save and educate them in the interest of God, King, and Church. If they do not have a soul, then we can treat them any way we see fit in the interest of God, King, Gold, King, and Church. Enslave them, violate them, exterminate, and eradicate them. The question was not, do we conquer, but rather, how do we conquer? The debate over definitions was a debate about how to authorize the conquest of the lands and their indigenous peoples. Are we mighty warriors or civilizing saviors? Are they brutish animals or lost souls? One way or the other, we define the embodied geography of being. Language and their deployments are no sideline of genocide and occupation. Language and its deployment authorize genocide and occupation in their varied forms. Language generates, especially as it bans and criminalizes. I turn again to generations and listen. In January 1996, there was an arson attack on a refugee hostel in Lübeck. 10 people were killed, 5 of them children. 38 were wounded. 4 young white German men were found near the burnt house with singed eyelashes, connections to neo-Nazi groups, and had no alibis. But it was Safwan Aid, a 19-year-old Lebanese man who had stayed on the roof of the burning house to help save others, who was immediately arrested and charged as the culpable criminal. The sole so-called evidence used against him, a first aid worker claimed that Safwan had said to him on the way to the hospital, "Wir waren es." We did it, it was us. Within hours, all across media, all across all public discourse, Safwan Aid became the embodiment of the criminal, primitive, barbaric, alien collective that is endangering the German Volkskörper. He faced 2 trials over the span of 3 years, and although there was never any evidence against him, he was never declared innocent. He was acquitted 2 times for lack of evidence, and thus remained branded a permanent suspect. What remained was wir waren es. It was us, the criminal, barbarian, alien collective, by definition, a permanent danger to civilization, a permanent suspect. And what also remained? 10 dead, 5 dead children, and murderers left free to live as innocents. This was 1996 in the new Germany, and it was a turning point. I turn again to generations and listen. in the 1980s in the context of glasnost and perestroika, as it became clear that the US and the West had won the Cold War, the FRG started positioning itself to finally become a full member of the US-European axis of power. There was a surge of redefining Germany and the German folk, a surge of reauthorizing and generating Germany. On the one hand, this articulated itself in distancing from Nazi generations, not as rebellious youth as in the 60s, but rather in the language of adult responsibility and the true German soul, now finally able again to proudly take its rightful place at the adult table of the civilized, protectors of civilization. In the language of Christian atonement, the renewed Germany had paid its penance, was now mature, cleansed, born again. The atoned protector was born again from the ashes of Jewish corpses. No other corpses were or are relevant to German generations. On the other hand, this rebirth articulated itself as the liberation of the folk, repressed and shackled far too long in guilt, long beyond its expiration date. These reauthorizings of the new Germany generated an explosion of racist violence. The early 90s were filled with people being burned alive, beaten, tortured, terrorized, and killed in a variety of ways. Hoyerswerda, Rostock, Mölln, Solingen, Lübeck, always authorized in terms of the alien criminal, the primitive, the animal, barbarian, endangering the borders and safety of the German Volkskörper. And parallel to this was the massive overhaul and intensification of the repressive border regimes and the emergence of Fortress Europe, deployed in the language of protecting the Volkskörper, protecting civilization from dangerous invasions. Sound familiar? Whether Christian atonement and adult responsibility or breaking free from expired shackles of guilt, one way or the other, this renewed Germany was and is authorized in the soil of Jewish ashes and generations of civilization. The Lübeck arson attack, murders, and juridical and discursive lynching of Safwan Eid was a turning point. It renewed, reauthorized, and normalized a deeply rooted discourse. We hear Lübeck today. We hear Hoyerswerda, Rostock, Mölln, Solingen, Hanau, NSU today, from Sonnenallee to Staatsräson, from BDS legislation to deportations to Palestine, from every banned river flowing to every banned sea. I turn to rivers and listen. Vincent Harding, the African-American scholar, political activist, and nurturer of the beloved community, spoke of the river of African-American voices and histories over centuries and generations. In his book, There is a River, The Black Struggles for Freedom in America, he speaks of, quote, the soul of the river, of its people, the living and the dead, the many thousands gone, the spirit of a community in hard and costly movement toward freedom. This river, this struggle for freedom, he calls the beloved community. Quote, the river is at its heart a profoundly human quest for transformation, a constantly evolving movement toward personal integrity and toward new social structures filled with justice, equity, and compassion. The river moves toward a freedom that liberates the whole person and humanizes the entire society. This is the magnificent opening toward which the river has been moving. The great ocean of humanity's best hope that it has always held and nurtured at the center of its own bursting life. Where life is precious, life is precious. Fatima, Obeda, Reem, Chaya, Sarah, and all the generations. These are the voices of the river. And they will flow, and they will flow, and they are the flow. Amdai,